One of the most important things that I think writers of historical fiction need to remember, and that I'm constantly reminding myself of, is that the history exists to serve story. First and foremost, you're telling the story of the most important thing to happen to someone's life.
This is Comiste, the show where authors reveal the meals and stories that shape them. Today I'm sharing a meal with Isabel Cañas, a genre-bending horror writer whose most recent novel is The Possession of Alba Díaz, set in 18th century Mexico. She used to read Dracula under her desk during her AP US history class.
So, Isabel, why Dracula?
Why not? I went through a phase that year where I started reading a lot of Gothic literature, and that clearly worked its way into my DNA, because I now can't seem to write anything but I started reading a lot of Edgar Allan Poe, which was simply one's bread and butter as a goth teenager. And I picked up Dracula, not thinking like how much it would impact me as a writer, but it is so good. Like, if you haven't read it, it moves at a ridiculous pace. The tension is world class, and the vibes are immaculate.
Today we're eating 3 chapters from Añejo, a modern Mexican spot in New York City. It's all about bold flavors, fresh ingredients, and playful twist. For our first chapter, we're eating guacamole with chips. Creamy avocado brightened with lime and cilantro paired with crispy golden tortilla chips.
First chapter is all about memory.
Yeah.
With this guac in front of you, what moments or people come up?
Oh, I think about my whole family. Now everybody lives in Austin, or like me, far-flung, far removed in the Pacific Northwest. And whenever we gather, there's usually H-E-B guac involved and chips. And if you don't know what H-E-B is, I am so sorry for you, because H-E-B is an institution. It's a family-owned grocery store in Texas that's a chain, and it has fantastic food. And so we gather around the table and we demolish like much guac and a lot of chips.
So some of your formative years were spent in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. What were some of the memories that you have of that time?
Oh man, it was crazy. We rented a house when we moved there for my dad's job, and the house that we lived in when we first moved there was like very modern. Lots of like floor to ceiling glass windows, lots of different levels, lots of white walls. It was very stark and very starkly decorated as well. Mexico City has like a rainy season and a dry season, and we moved there at the beginning of the rainy season. Thunderstorms would hit the city basically every single day in October, and like these really thick clouds would swing low, and being in the mountain, like in the hills, like overlooking the city, you could almost see them come down. And then these just powerful sheets of rain would come down. And I remember laying in bed, looking out these massive, modern, huge windows and seeing like forks of lightning across the sky when I was trying to sleep. So much rain washing down the hills outside the house. And it was just, there's a lot of water associated with those memories for me.
But I feel like that sounds like it's the perfect place to get inspired to write.
My little writer's brain is working away like, maybe we should set something there. Was it haunted? I don't know. Could I make it that way? Yes.
Probably,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, with that said, how did you even become interested in horror?
When I got my agent, I was working on a young adult fantasy novel. We tried to sell that, didn't go anywhere. I wrote another one, tried to sell that, flopped. It was something that I had poured so much of my identity into, so much of my family history, and it was rejected soundly. One editor said it was like too Mexican, or the names were too complicated. I cried in public, which I hate doing because I am a Scorpio and you will never know my secrets. And my husband gave me the whole like, okay, well, let's get back on the horse pep talk, which he has become very good at throughout my career, because writing involves a lot of rejection. And he said, well, you have this idea for another fantasy novel that you would really love to write, or this haunted house novel that you told me about. And I said, you know what? Let's do that.
And it was blending both of your interests in one.
Yeah. Because for the longest time, like the books I read that were Gothic had a specific setting. And by specific setting, I mean Anglo-American. And I remember when I was 19, I read Toni Morrison's Beloved for the first time, and it rewrote my brain chemistry. Like, I reread it recently. Now I'm a mother, and when I reread it, it is such a powerful novel. It is an incredibly powerful meditation on the lengths to which you will go to protect the people you love. Mm-hmm. And it's also an example of a post-colonial Gothic that I think truly embodies the spirit of what Gothic meant when it arose as a literary genre, because it was an inherently subversive genre, one that expressed what was repressed, one that gave voice to members of society that were historically oppressed or didn't have voice.
For chapter 2, we're eating enchiladas rojas and carne asada. The enchiladas are stuffed with tender chicken and smothered in a smoky red chile sauce, while the carne asada is juicy grilled steak, charred on the outside and full of flavor on the inside.
When you look at this meal, what comes up? What are you reminded of?
Well, this is a New York City facsimile of a meal that I've had hundreds of times over the course of my life. Things I could not find in New York City Mexican or Manhattan Mexican restaurants, I'd be curious if you could find it in Queens, include entomatadas, which the enchiladas rojas are like the closest I could get. I remember eating it so often over my grandparents' kitchen table when I was a kid and as an adult. And I remember even there was one time when my younger sister Olivia and I had a contest to see who could eat more. And so I think I ate in one sitting 11 entomatadas at once. I won. So that's the one half of the dish that represents my grandmother. And the other half, carne asada. So my grandfather was a butcher. And so his way of expressing love was always through food. And he passed around this time last year or so. I get choked up. That is why. And he loved going to the grocery store when he was retired, every single day, just to peruse what meat options there were, what was on sale. And he would then grill enormous amounts of meat for us when we would go to visit him. And so I have this photo of him that my mom took of him grilling steaks for us. So these are 13-ounce steaks that he would put on the grill. And the grill is this magical element of the meal that I simply cannot replicate. So we would eat roll-ups and have a massive steak. And my sisters and I were always hearty eaters when we were growing up. And it just made my grandpa so happy. He grew up with very little in northern Mexico. And, I was vegan for 3 years. And I never told my grandparents, because if I did, my grandfather would be like, "Are you poor? Do you need money?" Clearly, if you're it was just incomprehensible to him. So this carne asada won't ever come close to my grandpa's steaks. Nothing ever will, but it's pretty good.
Well, should we try the carne asada?
Let's do it.
A lot of your books are based on real Mexican history. How do you choose a time period for your books?
Oh, that's such a fun question. I look at a historical period and I look to see who would have money and who wouldn't. Because when I'm writing in the Gothic genre, one thing that is a part of that genre is themes of opulence and decay, of luxury and not, of luxury that was once grand but now decaying. And so in The Hacienda, my first novel, it's set in 1823, right after the end of Mexico's War of Independence from Spain, which ended in 1821. It was a grueling 11-year civil conflict that had a long-lasting impact on the economy of the newly independent Mexico. And so because of that particular economic situation, and because I knew I wanted my young ingenue, Beatriz, to marry a wealthy widower, I had to really look at the historical sources and figure out, okay, well, at the end of a really grueling period of civil conflict, who would still have money? And the answer was people who produced alcohol. Some of them still had money. The estate or the hacienda of the title was an hacienda that produced pulque, an agave spirit. So for the possession of Alba Diaz, I knew I wanted it set in a silver mine or near a silver mine because, like, I think when you start to look at silver mines in Mexico's history, it's really easy to find the money is right there, baby. It is in the walls in the form of ore. Mexico's silver economy was the backbone of the Spanish Empire between it and Peru. And so zeroing in on who had money and who didn't was incredibly easy in this particular period. But for the possession of Alba Diaz, I also knew that I wanted there to be a sense of precarity about the economic well-being of the families in the book, so to speak. When you looked at the silver mining economy, you often saw steep rises and sharp falls, boom and bust cycles in the economy. And so a family that was wealthy would become penniless overnight because their mine had flooded, or there was a collapse, or the price of mercury had gone up and suddenly they couldn't refine silver anymore and therefore had nothing. One of the most important things that I think writers of historical fiction need to remember, and that I'm constantly reminding myself of, is that the history exists to serve story. Yeah. First and foremost, you're telling the story of the most important thing to happen to someone's life.
Where did the romance start coming in?
To me, these are both genres that are not too dissimilar. They're genres of affect, where they succeed or they fail based on how they make the reader feel. So it's a very transferable skill set. So making the two kiss, so to speak, to me, seems really natural. It's the same skill set. Yeah, on a line level, trying to make someone feel, it's hard.
Do you ever find inspiration in real life for these love stories?
I do. Yeah, I do take inspiration from life. Not just the love stories that exist between partners romantically, but the love stories that exist within families. I love sister stories. One of my sisters, in a congratulatory fashion, pointed out that all of my books have like an annoying little sister, a snarky little sidekick who like pops up and shoots zingers and then vanishes off to have her own tale. And I was like, oh yeah, you're welcome. She's had such an impact on my life. Believe it or not, I love stories between parents and children, although in my books thus far, those relationships are generally a little fraught. Right. They're complicated. I think of my three novels, Vampires of El Norte is the novel that is the most a tribute to my family and my family dynamics. It takes place in South Texas, which is historically where my family has come from for more than 5 generations. And the character interactions are wholly organic to the same interactions we would have bickering over
a guacamole.
Exactly. There's so many scenes that I wrote that ended up on the cutting room floor because I couldn't stop writing the way that all of these characters would interact with one another. It felt like home.
If you could choose one word that captures this meal, what would that be?
Almost home.
Almost home.
Almost home. Definitely different, but almost there.
For our final chapter, we're eating bizcochos, Mexican holiday cookies flavored with cinnamon and anise. Light and crunchy with warm spice, they're a family tradition for Isabel Cañas, baked with her sister just for this occasion.
So, Isabel, I heard that these are your abuela's cookies.
Yes.
Could you tell me more about them?
Absolutely. These are bizcochos de vino, or wine cookies. I searched the internet high and low trying to find the recipe. And at the end of the day, the only place it seems to exist is in my grandma's notebook or binder of recipes. And so my sister got it. And she made these. My sister knocked it out of the park. They have these really pretty layers on the inside, and they just are flavor bombs. I love them.
Well, thank you for sharing these cookies with me, and I'm so excited to try them. Well, our final chapter is all about tradition, just like these Christmas cookies. So thinking of tradition, is there anyone real or fictional that you wish you could share these cookies with?
Oh my God, I wish I could share them with my grandma. I want to show her that my sister and I made them. They're not as good as hers, but they're not bad. I'm really grateful for the times that I did go to visit my grandparents and just like sat at their kitchen table and listened to them like tell family stories and gossip about people they knew 60 years ago. And I really treasure those. I remember there was one conversation I had with my grandmother sitting at the table just like this, where she was telling me a story about her grandfather who died during the Revolution and orphaned her mother, who was then sent to Monterrey and then went up to Texas to live with relatives, which is how part of her family ended up in Texas. And she looked at me. At that point, had had dementia for a while and was not always extremely present, but she was fully present, like razor sharp. And she looked at me and she said, "I can tell you're writing this down in your head. It's yours. You're welcome to use it." And I'll never forget that.
I read or watched something recently where people were talking about how even though people might not physically be here, they're here in all like the little things in your life that you carry. And I'm sure there are so many of these beautiful traditions you had with your grandparents that you now get to pass down to your kids.
Stop making me cry.
I'm trying not to.
I know you're trying to fix it. You're just making it worse. Yeah, I do. One special tradition that is now like something that we do more often and with more meaning is the Day of the Dead. We set up an ofrenda at my house. Up until I think it was 2023, I had never done it before because I lived in tiny apartments and I was like, oh, I don't have space. You know, this is for my mom's house. And also I'm afraid of my grandparents passing. I don't want to set up an ofrenda thinking that if I didn't, I would never have to. And so last year was the first year they were both on the ofrenda. And it was different, but it is something that we're going to keep doing every year so that my daughter, who met them only a couple times, knows their faces and their names and their stories. And so that my son, who never met them, gets to meet them in a way as well. And another tradition that we have now is we all watch Coco and we cry.
Oh, together.
It's like a rite of passage for like anyone of Mexican descent. Like watching this movie is like the minute the strings start at the beginning, tears fall. That is representation in media. The first time I saw that movie, like every hair on my body stood on end because the little boy Miguel in this movie looks just like my brother. And his little town looks just like my grandfather's town. And the way that people speak and the food that they share and the clothes that they wear and the way that they interact with one another. Like, that's what good representation in media is. And that's what I try so hard to bring to my novels.
How do you think we can pass on that storytelling onto future generations?
When I think of how storytelling has moved through my family over the generations, there's so much of it that is inherited without you even noticing, because it's the way that we gossip. It's the way that we talk about relatives who have passed on or relatives who are still alive who no one has seen in 20 years. Like, where is Uncle Jesse? We don't know. When I think of how much storytelling is a part of my life, that is where it started. It was listening to my grandfather tell stories about people in San Benito because as the butcher, he knew everybody. And he loved reading stories to us. And he would like make up all these conversations and create new characters. And you know, the words on the page, he was not limited, and not a man to be limited by the words on the page when he was telling us stories or reading books to us. And that's where it all started. Have never known a world without storytelling, and I never want my kids to know a world without storytelling either.
All right, Isabel, we finished our chapters and our meals. So I'd like to know, what are you most hungry for in life or in work or food-wise?
I think more Latina horror. More. There are so many incredible writers who are working right now in young adult literature and in adult horror whose books are incredible. And this folklore that they are reworking and bringing to audiences who might not be familiar with it, like Silvia Moreno Garcia, of course, Vanessa Montalban, and so many other writers. V. Castro have taken their unique twists on different stories, different elements of folklore, and made it really contemporary. And I think it really cuts to the bone. Selfishly, I want more of these books. And so I really hope that that my books shows people like there is a demand for these kinds of stories. There is a market that is hungry for these kinds of books. And, you know, I can only write one book a year, so you need to buy more of them from up-and-coming authors, you know? So that's what I want.
And hopefully we will see more of it. Fingers crossed.
Ojalá que sí.
Ojalá que sí. If you liked what you just watched, check out Isabel's latest book, The Possession of Alba Díaz, available through your local bookstore or library or at the link in the description below. Thanks for watching.